Royal icing does not have to be complicated or messy. The first time that I made royal icing, I did not use meringue powder. I tried it with the egg whites and the whipping and the delicate steps, and it was kind of a mess. But a much more reliable and easy way to get excellent royal icing that turns out fluffy, beautiful, and reliable every single time is by creating royal icing with meringue powder rather than egg whites. Hey there, welcome to Sarah Grace Cookie Co. I'm Sarah Grace, and here I teach people to create beautiful decorated sugar cookies and how to earn extra income with a home-based cookie business. You can learn more about my Pay What You Can course, The Cookie Classroom, and find inspiration, encouragement, and education about royal icing sugar cookie decorating at sarahgracecookie.com. If you enjoyed the video you see today, I'd love it if you would hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell so you never miss another cookie decorating video. Royal icing is the type of icing that we use to create beautiful decorated sugar cookies. If you've seen those beautiful cookies being decorated on Instagram, Facebook, you've probably seen a video of them at some point where they were using that runny icing that floods or coats the top of the cookie. That's royal icing. It's just been made and then thinned to different consistencies for creating things like cookies. Now, you can also use royal icing, usually in a thicker form, on cakes and other desserts, and you can use that thicker form of royal icing to create beautiful decorations like flowers and royal icing transfers. For more royal icing decorating tips and how to utilize the royal icing once it's made, you can check out my other videos on cookie decorating here on YouTube or my blog posts and tips at sarahgracecookie.com. To make your royal icing, you don't need a ton of ingredients, but you are going to need some essential equipment, and what ingredients you are using, you need to kind of pay attention to which ingredients you use. Because since there are so few ingredients, we want to make sure that we're paying attention to our technique and the ingredients that we use, because I've talked to so many cookie bakers who have heard from their customers or heard from family and friends that their icing has a soapy or like a just a not good texture, a soapy flavor or a weird texture, and that's what we want to avoid. So today I'm going to share with you some of my favorite brands of products to use, as well as the equipment that helps me make sure my royal icing is going to turn out like I want it to every single time. My favorite piece of equipment in my entire kitchen for making royal icing and doing basically anything else, baking or even cooking related, is my KitchenAid mixer. I have the KitchenAid Artisan, and it has been an absolute workhorse in my kitchen. I adore it. And for royal icing, you'll want to make sure that you have a paddle attachment. If you use one of those whisk attachments, that's going to incorporate way too much air into your royal icing, and you do not want that. You want to use the flat paddle attachment. The royal icing recipe that I use and have used for years comes from one of my friends on Instagram, Casey's Cakery. She's the owner of the Sweet Silhouettes cookie cutter company. So if you need some great quality cookie cutters, definitely check out Sweet Silhouettes. She shared her royal icing recipe on Instagram stories a few years ago, and that's the one that I've been using ever since. It's only 5 tablespoons of meringue powder, 3/4 cup of water, and about 1 pound of powdered sugar. Oops, I meant to say 2 pounds of powdered sugar. Anywhere you hear me say 1 pound, I meant 2. Now, I buy my powdered sugar in bulk, usually from Sam's Club, because that's what we have here locally. If you buy powdered sugar in the 1 pound bags, it's really easy to just dump a bag in. If you are using powdered sugar from Sam's Club or somewhere like Costco, you may want to invest in a food scale to help you easily measure 1 pound of sugar. I start by heating up my water a little bit. I don't want it to be super hot or boiling. I just want it to be fairly warm from the tap. Now, we have great well water, so if you don't have some kind of good water at your house, or you're working with water that isn't filtered, you may want to use bottled water or distilled water that's just been warmed up in the microwave for a bit so that it's not cold. because you want it to be able to dissolve that meringue powder really easily. You want to add your 3/4 cup water to the bowl of your stand mixer along with your 5 tablespoons of meringue powder. Now my preference is the Bakerpan meringue powder from Amazon. I used to use the Wilton and I really like it, but ever since trying Bakerpan, I've just been really impressed with how fluffy it is, how good the flavor is, and how reliable it is every single time. Again, I'll have all these resources, equipment, products that I'm talking about today linked down below. So if you want to check into these, if you want to go ahead and order them directly from Amazon, you can look in the description as well as in the blog post and find. And I take my paddle attachment and turn that on a 1 or 2 setting on my KitchenAid just to get the water and the meringue powder a little bit incorporated and fluffy. You don't want this to be mixed or like really foaming up or anything. You just want it to be closer to dissolved and have a little bit of bubble going. That's when we're gonna add our powdered sugar. I go ahead and add it all in at one time. I do not sift my powdered sugar. I used to because I thought that it was gonna yield a different result. But then I stopped sifting the powdered sugar and I've not had any trouble with clumps in my royal icing. After you add the powdered sugar, you want to mix again on that 1 to 2, maybe up to a 3 setting on your KitchenAid, just until everything's incorporated. Now, when you get to this step, you're going to be going, Sarah, you have steered me wrong. This is clearly not what I'm supposed to be doing. And trust me, I know it looks rough. It does not look like the fluffy royal icing that I've showed you in my videos before. But trust the process and keep going. Once it looks like the consistency of that thin kind of pourable honey, it's not going to look very pretty at this stage. That's when you want to crank up the mixer and let the mixer do the work for you, because that's when we create that beautiful, fluffy, cloud-like royal icing. So crank up that mixer to a 4, 5, 6. I always try to do it gradually because I've learned the hard way that it will tear up your mixer when you go straight from 1 to 6 and flop it back and forth so much. I'm rough on equipment. But anyway, when you pop that up to that 6 setting, set a timer for 4 minutes and let that icing mix and incorporate for a full 4 minutes. Now, when you pull up the top of the mixer, after 4 minutes, that's when you're going to see this gorgeous, fluffy, white cloud that is your royal icing. Now, at that point, you can begin to add food coloring. I love gel food coloring because gel is going to give you the best results when it comes to creating a beautiful royal icing finish, and it's not going to affect the consistency of your royal icing as much as a typical grocery store food coloring that's been diluted with water would. Now, if you want to learn more about royal icing consistency and how to mix it to the right consistency and then use that to decorate cookies, you need to check out my cookie classroom course. It's pay what you can, so you can get in for as little as $1, or you can take my free consistency confidence class and you don't have to pay anything for that one, and I'll teach you how to mix royal icing to the right consistency for sugar cookie decorating. But you can get Cookie Classroom for just $1 and you get like 20 classes about royal icing cookie decorating. So it's up to you. I'll put the links below. But after that's finished, you can then make your icing whatever consistency you want. You can start to decorate, create royal icing transfers. I like to use tipless piping bags for my royal icing cookie decorating. I'll link those below as well. But that's the basic recipe for royal icing. Now, you want to remember that you don't want any fat of any kind to get near your royal icing. So make sure you rinse out your mixing bowl really well before you get started. This is not one of those recipes where you want to make buttercream and then give the bowl a quick rinse and put it back in the KitchenAid to make royal icing, because there will still be fat on the inside of your mixing bowl. I recommend running it through the dishwasher before to make sure that there's no fat remaining on the inside of that bowl. Sometimes hand washing doesn't get it all completely off. But if you do have to hand wash, just be sure you really get in there with some soap and get all the fat off if you've been making something with butter oil, or any kind of fat. This is also why I don't recommend mixing royal icing with additions that have fat. If you want to make a chocolate royal icing, try adding some cocoa powder as opposed to melted chocolate chips, because that fat is going to cause the royal icing to not set up and harden in the way you want it to on your cookie or your cake. After your royal icing is made, you may not be using all of it that's in the mixing bowl at the same time. You want to make sure that you cover with either a wet tea towel that mixing bowl so that that icing doesn't develop a crust on top. If it starts to develop a crust, it's going to make mixing to consistency and running through a piping bag a lot more complicated. I love this little plastic doodah that goes on the top of my KitchenAid mixing bowl. I just pop it on top of the bowl, and it keeps my icing fresh for as long as I need it to, as I'm pulling out a little bit at a time to make those different consistencies. Now, when it comes to storing royal icing, I don't like to leave mine out overnight or for multiple days at a time. I prefer to pop it in the refrigerator because it does change the texture a little bit of the icing. If at all possible, I prefer to do all my decorating for one consistency on day one and then not create the next consistency of icing that I need after that first layer has dried until the following day, if that makes sense. So I'll flood all my cookies, let that flood completely dry at room temperature, somewhere where cookies have really good air circulation. So if you're wanting your royal icing to dry nice and flat and smooth, you do not want to pop it in the oven where it doesn't have access to the air getting to it. You want to put it either out on your counter or on a baking rack, somewhere that there's going to be lots of airflow over those cookies. But I let that first layer dry, and then if I want to add details, I'll leave my icing in the bowl like this and put it in the fridge. Whatever I don't use for my flood round of cookie decorating, I will pop into the fridge straight in the mixing bowl. And then the next day when I'm ready to add my details, I'll pop it back out and I'll give it a mix with the mixer to kind of refresh it so that it looks like the same consistency that I started with the day prior. And then I'll use that icing to create the consistencies for the detail work that I'm about to do. Now, the only exception to this for me is flowers. I do not like to use day-old icing for flowers. So if I'm decorating flower cookies, I plan to do those on days when I have icing freshly made, and I can use it within an hour or two of making it. Now, royal icing will store in the fridge for 3 to 5 days. I always kind of go on the conservative side. You might could push it a little bit further. People have asked me about freezing royal icing before. I know it's possible, but I personally prefer not to because, again, it's a texture thing. It changes the way that I make my consistency, and it changes the texture of the icing to me. So I prefer not to freeze, but I have heard other people say that they make theirs ahead and freeze. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more royal icing cookie decorating content, be sure to click the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss a video. And if you want to see what we've got for you as far as resources, blogs, things that can be helpful and inspirational to you as you learn to decorate sugar cookies, go to sarahgrayscookieco.com. That's sarahgrayscookieco.com. Thanks so much for watching.